Hello, macro students. Here we are. It's Ms. Recknan, and we're here to discuss Module 6, Supply and Equilibrium. Last time in Module 5, we discussed demand, which is the behavior of buyers for goods and services, and what sorts of things can impact their behavior. And we discussed the law of demand, where if the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down, meaning if the price of something goes up, fewer people are willing and able to buy it. And we discussed what can cause that change in quantity demanded, which is caused by a change in price. And that was different than a change in demand, which is caused by one of those 5 factors, which causes that whole new curve to occur. All right, so here is supply. So demand is buyers, supply is sellers. Some people have a little bit more trouble understanding supply than demand because we have experience with demand. Demand is buying stuff, and we've all bought things before, but we don't always have experience with supply or selling things. So it's kind of hard to think from that lens, but that's okay. We'll get through it. All right, so it says here that supply is how much of a good or service that producers will sell at different prices, and it's a line. And then quantity supplied, how much of a good or service that producers will sell at one specific price, and that is a point. So a change in supply is caused by, again, 5 different factors, and a change in quantity supplied is caused by a change in the price. So here we go with our law of supply. It says that a higher price level leads to a higher quantity supplied, ceteris paribus. A lower price level leads to a lower quantity supplied, ceteris paribus. Well, why? At a higher price, businesses can make more money when they sell something. Therefore, they are willing to produce more. And here's where we often get kind of stuck in our thinking, where like a higher price causes producers to make more or supply more of something. So let's bring it down to the most basic business that a lot of us have experience with, or at least you've seen them from time to time, which is the lemonade stand, right? Summertime, kids get out there and they have a little lemonade stand, and they're selling those little Dixie cups full of lemonade for like a quarter, maybe 50 cents, and people stop and they buy them. And if we were together in person, I would literally say to the whole class, I would say, class, how many of you this last summer had a lemonade stand? And everyone looks at me like I'm dumb, and they go, I didn't have a lemonade stand last summer. I go, well, why not? And they go, because I'm too old. I'm 18, 17, right? Too old for that. And I say, well, right, but lemonade stands, you can make money. Are you too old for money? And my students always tell me that it's just not worth it to have a lemonade stand. You can't really make that much money. They'd rather go out and get like a real job and make better money. And we agree, like, all right, yeah, those little cups of lemonade, they sell them for 50 cents. You might not sell that many all day. And by the time you pay for the cups and the lemonade mix, and then you sit out there all day, it's just not worth it, right? Well, I said, okay, well, my next thing then is to play a little bit of pretend. Let's pretend that we live in a world where you could sit out on the corner and have a lemonade stand, and people would buy those cups of lemonade from you for $5. And they would just come all day and they'd buy them, and you'd sell a whole bunch. And my class of seniors, a couple of them raised their hand then. They're like, yeah, I would totally do a lemonade stand if people would buy those little cups of lemonade for $5 a piece. And then I'm like, well, how about $10? And like, by this time, half the class was raising their hand. They're like, I would totally do that if people would buy them for $10. I said, well, what about $20? And then I'm raising my hand as the teacher. I'm like, sorry, y'all are going to have to find yourselves a new econ teacher. I'm now a lemonade stand entrepreneur. All right, so what that story says is that the higher the price went, the more and more people are willing to supply it. And if we lived in this world where people would be willing and able to buy those little cups of lemonade out on the corner for $20 a piece, the supply would increase, right? Well, so many of us would be out there trying to get involved in this lemonade game and make some money doing that. And so what I always do is in my notes, I just, off to the side, I put a little star and I write lemonade stand, because that lemonade stand story makes sense to me and it helps me remember, like when I'm taking a test, helps me remember the law of supply. Price goes up, quantity supplied. Price goes up, more people want to sell that lemonade, so the quantity supplied goes up as well. Okay, so you can memorize the law of supply. Price up, quantity supplied up. Price down, quantity supplied down. You can memorize that, and that's okay. Or you can understand it. And what helps me understand it is going back to that lemonade stand example. All right, so let's go to page 2. All right, we have 4 ways to show the law of supply, just like with law of demand, right? We had 4 ways to show that. Well, the first one is words, and we just wrote out all those words. When the price of something increases, the quantity supplied increases, ceteris paribus. And when the price of something decreases, the quantity supplied decreases, ceteris paribus. But that's too much to write. We're not going to do that again. We're just going to write in our symbols. So P goes up, comma, quantity supplied, so big Q, little s, goes up. P goes down, comma, quantity supplied goes down, comma, ceteris paribus. Okay. Remember that ceteris paribus is just all other things remain constant. Like how somebody's always going to raise their hand in class and be like, well, teacher, what about if this happens, right? Like, we're not talking about those what about ifs when we're talking about the law of supply. It's if everything else stays the same, if it's only the price that increases, then the quantity supply will also increase. All right, so how do we put this in a supply schedule? Well, we have our P and our Q, which seems backwards in math class, right? But here in econ, this is how we do it. And if we have a price of $1, $2, and $3, and if I were to say, arrange the numbers 1, 2, and 3 in the quantity column, would we go 1, 2, 3, or would we go 3, 2, 1? Well, remember, if the price is going to go up, the quantity supplied needs to go up. So the price looks like it's going up from $1 to $2 to $3, so the quantity supplied has to go up as well. So that's going to be 1, 2, and 3 as well. All right, and then here we can take this schedule and turn it into a curve, or turn the chart into a graph, if you will. And let's see, price goes on the y-axis, so that is $1, $2, $3, and quantity goes on the x-axis, so that is 1, 2, 3, and then we just plot our points, which we know how to do. So $1 and 1, $2 and 2, and $3 and 3. We connect our dots and we label it S for supply. And this supply curve shows the law of supply. And how do we know that? Well, let's say we picked the price of $1 and that was our first price. Well, the quantity supplied would be 1. And if the price went up, the quantity supplied would go up as well. So that picture, that graph, demonstrates to us the law of supply. Before we go on, I want to show you guys one little trick, one little econ trick. Now, if you are ever creating a graph, a supply and demand graph, and you are like, where do I label this stuff? I have a little trick for you. Because you know that you have to label one of the axes P for price and one of the axes Q for quantity. I literally remember it this way, or at least I used to when I was more new at this. The letter P has a vertical line in it. The letter Q does not. So the letter P goes on the vertical axis. Vertical P, vertical axis. And that is a little trick that might help you through there. All right. So let's go on to page 3. Which is decrease in and increase in quantity supplied and supply. All right, so now remember, quantity supplied is a point. Supply is a line. So when we think of decrease in quantity supplied, we're going to go from one point to another point. All right, so let's label our P and our Q. And let's pick a price, any price. So let's say that's our price 1 and this is our price 2, or you could call it A or B. And then let's draw in just your generic supply curve and you label it S. At this point 1, the quantity supplied would be here. And at this point 2, the quantity supplied would be here. And you can see that the quantity supplied went down. Even without numbers on here, we know that the number 0 is at the origin. So we know that if it's going to the left, it's getting closer to 0, which is a decrease. So a decrease in quantity supplied is caused by a decrease in price. All right, now for our increase in quantity supplied, you can draw in your supply curve. Got our P and our Q. And then this increase in quantity supplied, it is caused by an increase in price, caused by a price increase. So we can draw a price increase on our graph. We can just pick a price and label that price 1. Pick a different price, label it price 2. Show what happens. Price 1 goes with quantity 1 here. Oops. Price 2 goes with quantity 2 here, and we see that they both increased. So increase in quantity supplied is caused by an increase in price, which again shows us that law of demand. All right, well, let's talk about next the change or shift in supply. So it says a shift in the supply curve, which changes the quantity supplied at any given price. So at every given price, the quantity supplied will either increase or decrease is a shift or a change in supply. And there's two different types of changes, the decrease and the increase. Decrease in supply here, it says even at the same price, producers will supply or make less of it. Increase says that even at the same price, producers will make or supply more of it. So a decrease in supply is a leftward shift, and an increase in supply is a rightward shift. Okay, so how do we do these leftward, rightward shifts? Well, first we label our P and our Q, and then just draw a supply curve, and we're going to label it supply 1. And we're going to have a new supply curve, and we need to figure out, is our new supply curve, is it going to go over here or over here? Which one? Well, let's see. It says right here it's a leftward shift. Now, so many people with the supply curve, they think up or down because of the way the curve goes. Do not think up or down. It will mess you up. It is left or right. So which line is to the left of the original line? Is it this one or this one? It is this one. That is to the left of the original supply curve. It moved left. All right, so how do we show with this graph that even if the price didn't change, the producers will make less of it, meaning the quantity supplied went down? Well, pick a price. The price isn't going to change. And at our first supply curve, our quantity was here, so you can call that 1 or you can call it Q1. And at our second supply curve, the quantity is here, so 2 or Q2. And we can see it went to the left, which is a decrease. So a leftward shift in supply shows a decrease in supply. All right, well, increase in supply. So again, you start out with your original supply curve. And it says here it's a rightward shift for an increase in supply. So there is your second one. And you can show that by picking any price and making it go up to both lines. At our original supply, our quantity was here. at our new second supply curve, our quantity was here, which is an increase in quantity supplied. Now, if you get to a test and you're like, uh-oh, I don't remember, is decrease left or right? I don't remember. That's okay if you understand it. A decrease in supply is going to cause a decrease in quantity supplied. And so you can take a look at, you can draw a rough graph here, and then you can think, all right, well, if this is my price, then that would be my first quantity. Well, which line would cause it to decrease if that's what you're trying to figure out is a decrease? Would it, be this one or this one? And then you can see, all right, well, the price was here at that one, price is here. So, oh wait, this one is a decrease, that one's an increase. So you can go through it in your head or on paper on your test. The people who do the best on the tests in my class are the people who draw these things out. They don't think, oh, I can visualize all that. They actually take the time to draw it out and think about it. Another thing that I want us to add is a little reminder that a change or a shift in supply is a new line. And that decrease in supply or quantity supplied or an increase in quantity supplied, these two things are a new point. And so a decrease in quantity supplied, that's caused by this first point here moving to that second point there. And this increase here is your first point and it moves to that second point there. Okay, so new point up here, new lines down here. Okay, I'm going to stop the video and create a second part.